you can't lose money that you never would have had the deal not been struck in the first place. And whether it's we weren't here in 2005, so it'd be easy for us to criticize it. But at the time, I think it was a good deal for the community, even though Google got a sweetheart deal. We had lost the aluminum plant, and we were, I don't want to use the word desperate, but we were hungry for some sort of revenue. So a deal was struck.
Welcome. I'm Robin. Welcome to the CCC News podcast. I'm here today with Commissioner Scott Hage and Mayor Rich Mays. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
We're talking today a little bit about tax abatements, school funding, and other kind of city and county details. We recently released a column, an opinion column by me, on the Google tax breaks and the impact they're having on local schools, as well as other critical local infrastructure. And we're here to look at those details and talk through them and shed some light on the issue. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Cool. So we were talking about the number that I released. We did some calculations, and it looks like about $2,700 per student per year of loss to tax abatements with Google. We can go back a step when we talk about the abatements that we've given to the 3 Google projects. Starting in 2005, we gave them 15-year, 100% property tax abatement with the enterprise zone agreement on the first one, followed by 2021. There were 2 further agreements that followed the strategic investment program, an ad hoc process of strategic investment program that gave them 50% and 40% tax reduction on their property taxes. But we only have 1 year of tax for Google so far. So those estimates are really, really wild because we only have 1 year of Google taxes, even though they arrived in 2005 and we're here 20 years later.
About the first receipt.
Yeah, we have 1 tax receipt, right? And it's in the region of 5.2 million, right? So from that tax picture, we can start to paint a picture, a very bare minimum picture of what that tax abatement really looks like. Mm-hmm. The conservative estimate of the cost of these abatements is around in the region of 240 million over their lifespan of 45 contract years, and the high estimates are in 500 and 600 million. So tell me why that number is wrong.
Well, from my standpoint, you describe it as being a loss.
Okay.
This is money that the school district is losing, and I would submit that you can't lose money that you never would have had the deal not been struck in the first place. And whether it's we weren't here in 2005, so it'd be easy for us to criticize it. But at the time, I think it was a good deal for the community, even though Google got a sweetheart deal. We had lost the aluminum plant, and we were, I don't want to use the word desperate, but we were hungry for some sort of revenue. So a deal was struck that brought, I believe, when you count the payments in lieu of taxes, somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million over that 15-year period. Then we had 2 other negotiations that happened in between the first and the last one. You had the Taylor Lake facility and you had the 2013. Those also brought in revenues to the city, to the community actually, that we would not have had the deals not been struck in the first place. So to say that the school district lost money, that's money they never would have had we not struck those deals in the first place. Now, on the last deal, which was 2021, they are paying, as you pointed out, property taxes. They are getting a good, pretty good tax abatement, but we're getting more revenue off of that last deal than the first 3 combined. And that includes property tax revenue for the next 15 years. So I guess I would take exception to using the term the school district lost this money when they never would have had the money in the first place if we wouldn't have struck the deal. They're getting additional revenue. And so I would submit that they're not really it's not like we went to the school district and took money out of their pocket. That's not the way it happened at all. Okay, so we negotiated this last deal. I'm not sure that 2734 where that came from. Is that from the first data center or the last data center or whatever? But either way, I think my point is that whether it's the first deal you're talking about or the last deal or any of the deals, that these are all revenues that came into the community that would have never happened had we not struck the 4 deals we struck. So that, I guess that's my point.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, so Good Jobs First, which is the basis of a lot of what I think you did.
Yeah, I brought the report,
It is a political organization funded by politics, right? So they come off, they try to make themselves being a data-driven, but they're very politically motivated. If you look at them, even independently look at them. So I think you need to be careful about using their data because they make an assumption, as Rich says, that that a business should pay full property taxes, right? And if you don't get full property taxes, that's a loss. Right. But it's kind of silly because if you and over the years, I've been working on this for a long time. People say, well, why didn't you just tell them they got to pay the whole deal? It's like, we could have. And they wouldn't be here. They would have never been here. And so people will say, well, that's not true. It's like, how do you know that? Well, I do know that in terms of many discussions with them, a history of incentives. And it's not just Google, too, right? It's like, I worked at the port. I came here in 1991. I've been working on, developments for the Dalles to try to create jobs. And it's important to us to get good jobs, right? And to also get tax base. So sometimes you have to negotiate a deal. It could be even a local company that's going to expand. And we've had many of them where we've had companies that were going to expand and they didn't have to stay here. We wanted them to stay here, and we discussed and had negotiations based on trying to sell them land at a certain price, get in the enterprise zone and other things. So Google's the same thing on a much larger scale. I think the thing that is most disappointing to me about the piece that came out recently was two things. One, it's kind of blatantly kind of negative in terms of Google. And there's a lot of, I would call them Google haters in town. And I don't understand why. I mean, it's frustrating to me. We, as the city and the county, when I was at the port, we've spent so much time trying to develop our economic base and make sure that we have an economic base so kids can actually have jobs, so our grandkids can get jobs. And then there's people that no matter what you do, no matter who the company is or what deal is made, they just don't like it. It's never good enough. It's never good enough. That's the first thing. So it's just there's so much negativity in this community. It's very frustrating to me. We have a great community. We do great things. We have a lot of great things, but we tend to talk about all the negative things. And I just think that creates just negative energy. The second thing is the assertion, which comes from Good Jobs First, which is true in other states, but it's not true in Oregon. So to say that the school district is losing money because of a tax is just blatantly wrong, because that's not how school funding works. There's equalization in the state of Oregon. The money all goes to the state, and it comes back to. So even if you had gotten full taxes from Google for the thing, it would not change the amount the school district would get. And what we have worked with the city and the county is to try to find ways that we could get fees from these projects that are not taxes. Because when property taxes come in, they go to the state for schools in particular, and then they come back as kind of equalized payments. So it's always been frustrating for us because we have this opportunity, this big development, but it can't really help the schools unless we figure out a way where we get fees out of them. And the mayor worked a lot on the strategic investment program last time and worked to find out, one, get rulings that are like the community service fees, I think, are not taxes, right. Their fees, even though they kind of come as part of that tax base. So we've been working really hard to try to do all we can for the schools to try to get them. So it's frustrating to me that Good Jobs Plus, it may be true in other states, but it's absolutely not true here. So for that to be kind of the headline, it's kind of blatantly wrong. And it's frustrating to me because it's a negativity. Again, Google is taking money away from our kids. It's just not true.
The one thing I'd like to say, I'm not disagreeing with Scott. I think he made a very strong case for how we both feel. But as far as this negativity, I don't sense that negativity as much. We had, Scott and I were talking before, I bet between the city and the county, we must have had 20 public meetings just about between the water issues and the financial issues. And we didn't, at least from the city standpoint, we didn't get a lot of negative people showing up at our meetings objecting to this. So, and in the article, I think it was talking about all these people that I don't sense that I'm getting a lot of negative comments about the deals we struck with Google. There might be some social media stuff in there, but I don't I don't really participate in that. So
Which is a good thing.
yeah, which is a good thing. Yeah. So to Scott's point too is that we had so many public meetings on this whole issue throughout 2020, 21. I made public presentations to, and I asked you about if you were still a member of the Kiwanis Club, because I remember going before the Kiwanis Club. It was a Zoom meeting because of the COVID thing. I don't know if you were there, but I went through all the numbers. And I remember John Nelson, who was on the school board then, taking very copious notes and asking me a lot of questions about the numbers that I was coming up with. And I thought those meetings went really well. I did the Lions Club and the Rotary Club as well. And anyway, that's kind of like where we're coming from. I thought parts of this were kind of an unfair spin on the numbers themselves.
Yeah. I mean, some responses like, firstly, I'm dedicated to positive energy in this community. I'm dedicated to forwards moving, progressive and good ideas from wherever they come from, and supporting those good ideas. My work has shown that, and doesn't mean that that's not a basis for zero criticism, right? Like good positivity doesn't go with zero criticism, right? All this is deserved criticism, right? Because we've got with this, regardless of whether the school's equalization formula lands there, like we have an enormous tax break on these things. We're not seeing these comparative tax breaks on other businesses that similar size or smaller size, or small businesses are not getting the same breaks as the strategic investment program. To go into the SIP strategic investment program was made in the 1990s before we even had data centers. It was intended for factories and for manufacturing and to boost those types of plants. It wasn't intended for data centers. It's been co-opted by the data center revolution, and it doesn't bring the jobs and the tax base back in when it's set up with the data center as it does with manufacturing. With manufacturing, you make lots of really good jobs in a community. We're looking at 50 jobs, 100 jobs, right? That's not in line with the size of what we've had to give up in terms of our industrial zone. If we had incentive programs that didn't just invite the largest and most powerful and richest corporation on the planet, we instead would have a tax base that was diverse, right? And we could give incentive programs to lots of different sizes of organizations, not just organizations investing more than $100 million.
Let me just take issue with a couple of things on that. First of all, Google applied for and got the SIP benefits. That does not mean that we couldn't give those benefits to anybody else who applied. If another business came in here, and as a matter of fact, we've entertained giving tax breaks similar to what we gave to Google, not on the scale, but certainly other businesses have come to us, and we have done other SIP agreements with one or two of them.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the number of jobs, they supply a lot more jobs than 50 or 100 jobs. What people overlook is that they have independent contractors that supply services to them. For example, food service. Most people that work in the food services at their data centers are not employees of Google. They're employees of a company that provides that food service to Google. Security is another one. They have a few hundred people that work security for Google that work for an independent company. Logistics is a third example. I think electricians, for example.
In the construction phases, yeah.
No.
These
are operational.
They have contracts with companies.
That does not include the jobs that when they're constructing the plants. So I just wanted to point that out, is that I think that they employ, when you consider and include the independent contractors I just alluded to, I think they employ between 500 and 600 jobs. So
I haven't seen any data to support that, good or bad, right? We're looking at this good schools data, and we're complaining about that, but that data has not been cited. That's nowhere to be found. We've just invented that number.
I didn't just invent it. I know that from talking to Google. Okay.
That's fine, but that's not cited, right? We're using cited, so regardless of whether we.
Well, where did you come up with 50 to 100 jobs then?
From cited sources, right? From the Oregonian.
Okay, but those are employees of Google, and they're not include. You can't deny that there's more than 50 or 100 jobs there when they have independent contractors that supply the bulk of the jobs.
I guess my answer is that like union manufacturing jobs are far better than food service and security, and that we should be pushing for good union jobs, not just service supportive roles. Like I get, yes, there is some extraneous. And we're in the middle of a boom cycle right now. Right? It looks like this right now because we've got lots of construction workers, we've got lots of extra people that need housing, that need food, and it creates a bubble. Yeah, I mean that's the reality. But the numbers of jobs that are cited are in the 50 to 100 range. Right, that's the reality.
Yeah, again, those are the number of employees they have, and I would submit also that I don't know. I understand that those are good paying jobs. I don't know if they're union jobs, but between the salary and the benefits, those are good jobs. The other 400 that they have, and
yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, there's food service obviously, but there's the other jobs that they have are pretty well paid jobs. So
yeah, security is,
I think it's a valid point. Like what is the total job picture, and it is a little fuzzy. And I think that from the beginning, the very beginning, this project was Project 02, and we didn't know who they were and all this kind of stuff. So it has been a process to kind of get through. And Google, frankly, you think about it, when they came here, they were a very, very young company. This was the first data center they built anywhere in the world. Yeah. And they were very secretive as a result of that. I mean, their culture and the way they deal with stuff has changed a lot. Mm-hmm. It's very different than a lot of other places like, Facebook, for example. I mean, they're not very secretive about their stuff, but Google still is, still moderately secretive for good reasons, security and stuff like that. But there are some things like that. I think you made some points in your article, and I think transparency is an important thing. I think we need to be as transparent as possible. And I think the jobs thing is always a little confusing. Yeah. But at the same time, I think the thing that sometimes becomes frustrating, or I'm trying to think of the word, is people want to criticize like everything that we do when they don't really even know. And like a lot of times, and this happens a lot on social media, but they just jump on points and they never come and ask. They never come to a meeting. There's just like no communication. People love grabbing onto something and say, this is horrible. I saw it somewhere, and they don't have any basis for it either. So I think that, you make a valid point, but I think, we can get you that information, and we should get you that information. So, because I think that, like as Rich said, there's a lot more jobs out there, and I think the impact on our economy is significant. Data centers are like on the low end in terms of jobs per acre. But, when you talk about like the SIP program and these incentive programs in terms of how they were designed back, when they were designed, the thing about data centers that people don't understand that like if you took a typical kind of factory and put it on, let's say a 20-acre site, like where one of these data centers is, there would be more jobs created. That's for sure. But the amount of investment that goes into this, so the amount of money, let's say you put a factory on there and you spend $250 million. That's what those programs were set up for. And that's how come the incentives were set up. Well, what happens is these data centers go on there and they use the same footprint and they invest $1 billion or something, just huge, like multiple times more from an investment standpoint. And that's why the incentive programs, they won't go anywhere because they're not going to pay taxes on $1 billion. It's just not going to happen. And the projects are desired by communities, just like they were desired by our community. But there has to be a give and take, right? A lot of times you talked about fairness, and I totally agree. We need to figure out what fair is. We spent a lot of times, months and months, and frankly, some of these negotiations took years. And we wanted, and it was brutal. Rich can attest to it. The negotiations were brutal, and that's exactly what we try to get, is to a point where there's fairness, right? But there's fairness on both sides, and a lot of people are critical because, well, Google's the, whatever. A lot of times they say it's the richest company in the world. I don't think it is anymore, but whatever the case might be, they're rich, right? They have a lot of money. Yeah. But the reason they're rich is because they still do business to their advantage, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not going to come into a community and go, well, we'll give you everything you want because that's what you want, and we don't care. It's always going to be a negotiated thing. So they're going to try to.
That's not what we're asking. We're just to pay fair share. It's not everything we want.
No, but But what I'm saying is that we spent, years working on getting what we feel is our fair share. And then people are just critical. Like, well, you should have done better. You could have done better. Well, okay, that's good for you to say, but you were not there. You don't know the details behind it. And we worked very hard on trying to get the fair share. And frankly, if you look at this community, if you look at how entities in this community are doing, the school district is a unique example because of the situation with fair share, but almost all of the other entities are doing pretty well. And I can tell you from a county perspective, there's not very many counties in the state of Oregon that are not in the red. And we're not in the red, not by a long shot. And I think the city and many other places are as well. And part of that, not total, but part of that is because of these agreements that we made and because of the investments that have been here that are not in other communities and not in other counties. So, when people are critical about what we did and kind of infer that we'd be better off without them, it's very disappointing that, we've worked so hard to try to get to where we are and we've done well. And then people are critical. It didn't do good enough. We want to be enriched more. And it's just like, okay, well, there's a point in time that, it's just not going to happen. And that's, I guess that's my perspective. And the people that have been the biggest detractors just don't get that. They're like, they would have paid full taxes. They're rich, so they should pay. It's like, okay, well, they're not going to. So that's a great example. But if we'd taken that position, they would not be here. I guarantee you that.
Hey,
Tell me about advertising at CCC News.
all right. We've been on a real roll lately. We're up to 110,000 unique readers this month.
That's insane.
It's insane. And these are all people that are customers for our local readers in the community.
That's huge.
Yeah. So we do advertisements, digital advertisements that are rotated through all of our stories. Think of it like this. Every time we have a great headline rolling out there and people are reading the story, your advertisement can be right next to it.
That's awesome. How many views does advertisers get every month?
Well, they're averaging somewhere between 50 and 60,000 per month.
Ooh, if I was to buy 60,000 impressions somewhere else, that might be like really expensive. Is that right?
It would be, but thank goodness we're CCC News and we're offering people great value. We can get advertising going for folks for $300 month to month. But if you're willing to go a little bit longer, say a 6-month or a 12-month contract, we can get those prices down to $250 a month.
That's amazing. Great. How can people get in touch?
Oh, well, easy. You just contact me, Tom, at cccnews.com. Again, that's Tom at cccnews.com. Or you can reach me at 541-980-2756.
I'm going to tell all my friends.
Right on. Hit.
Let's go back to the state school funding formula because I didn't answer that question. Okay. And it was good. You made a good point. Like when we take less tax revenues, it's equalized by a state school funding equalization formula. And typically, years on years, the legislature will backfill the school budget with extra money from the legislator, right? But the amount of money that Oregon as a whole is losing to tax abatement is growing at such a pace that the legislature actually hasn't voted to backfill this state school fund. Mm-hmm. And so there's actually a big shortfall in school funding that the legislature isn't going to fill. So this story about it doesn't actually make a difference, and that actually, in fact, because the state school funding formula, it's all equalized anyway, is not quite true. In fact, this is happening across the state, right, on a really large level, and that is having an impact, right? And it's less harder to make the per dollar per student local number granted, right? And the state school formula does skew that $2,700 number, but at the same time we're missing money in the school funding. Just for reference, so because $275 million is not a number I can really comprehend. It's 3,500 people, staff, in the schools across Oregon at the average pay, including their benefits. So it's 3,500 staff were the price of we're missing in this.
3,500 staff or $3,500?
$275 million would pay for 3,500 school staff at a blended average of their pay.
Yeah. So the problem, though, with that thinking is what we talked about earlier. Is like people say we've lost this money, right? We haven't lost anything. And I say that because we weren't going to get it, right? So it's the assumption that we lost the money. If we had had full taxes with no incentives, we would get that. And I agree with that. But what the reality of that is, you wouldn't get any of that. You would have nothing because you would get nothing. Because if you don't, work and negotiate with the business to try to get some fairness around it, they will not come here. I mean, I just telling you, people don't believe that sometimes, but I've done this a long time in my life. And it doesn't matter if it's a small company that's local and, they also have opportunities to go different places. They can move to Hood River, they can go to Morrow, they can move to other states. I mean, sometimes there's good reasons to do that. So we have to be competitive in that arena. So when you say we've lost, and these studies say we've lost some money, it's not money we've lost. It's money that we were never going to get. And we actually, instead of, the money that we got is the money we got. The money that we lost is just this fabricated, if we had had full taxes, then we would have got it. But the reality is you would have never had that. You would have had zero. That's the reality.
I appreciate that is the reality in the negotiating room, and I appreciate that the building of this mountain of negotiation has landed us there. I can certainly appreciate that, right? But the reason I'm upset from my millennial perspective, right, which is the name of my column, is that at the end of somebody's investment cycle, right, of somebody's life, it's actually fine, right? There's that time will go and it'll happen. But for me, at the beginning of my investment cycle, building a house, trying to build a family, it's actually 45 years of contract time is an enormous amount of time, right? These agreements could have been shorter, right? They could have been, the issue with the infrastructure is that the infrastructure doesn't have another 30 years that it can last in the midst of this issue, right? We know there's a crisis of school infrastructure in the Dalles, right? That's a known issue. And by pushing this issue 30 years into the future, we're buying 30 years that we don't have, are we not?
How are we pushing it 30 years in the future?
Well, because the length of the SIP agreements is up to the counties that are negotiating with them, and we've negotiated them all at their maximum length, knowing that our aging infrastructure is aging and has passed its lifespan.
What aging infrastructure?
The school. I'm talking about the school specifically. When we get into the water argument, our water treatment is also available. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I can address the water issue, but I'm not sure I understand what you mean by this. You're talking about a new high school? Is that?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that we know that the schools they were built, the high school was built in 1935.
Right.
Those builds were intended to last 50 years. We're at 80-something years with this build, right? And we know that it only feeds for lunch 10% of the population of the school. I'm not going to try and slander the school. That's not my intention, right? But we know that we're past that cycle where we need to be investing in new facilities for those high school students.
Well, the school bonds.
And so what happens with the bonding, right, is because that number wasn't on the tax rolls at that point, we couldn't say that the bond rate was actually going to be 10% lower than it actually was, which was 30 cents. Because as soon as the Google came onto the tax rolls, a year later, we were able to say, oh, wow, the tax rate for the school bond would have gone down by almost 30 cents. By the time 2 and 3 had gone down, it's going to go down almost 90 cents, which would have made it totally passable. And so this delay in...
Passable? Did you say passable?
Passable, thank you. Okay. Yeah, it was good.
Did you say that?
I did say that.
Okay.
Yeah, passable. Well, what I mean by that is that the main feedback was that it was too expensive, right? That was the big overarching feedback that we got.
I don't agree that was the number one issue. I think that was an issue. I don't think it was the number one issue.
It was one of the issues. Affordability is an issue in this city and in this county, right? We have a housing crisis. You don't need me to tell us that, right? So by pushing this 30 years without having the infrastructure to be able to hold us for 30 years, we're creating more of a problem. And and the question is really, what are we going to do now, right? What is that? Are
you suggesting that Google should have come? What are you suggesting, that Google should have done something to make the school bond pass or something like that? Is that, or?
I'm saying that this was part of the equation when you were making this equation in 2021, right? Part of this equation was how long is the infrastructure that needs to be replaced gonna last, right? And one of those questions is the schools. I'm asking it now, but I hope that I'm not the first person to ask this question.
No, I mean, I think it's the same kind of thing where you go back to like, I'm assuming you're saying, well, if they were paying more, then the school bond would pass, or the school would have more money, or whatever. And a lot of people have this kind of idea that somehow Google's supposed to solve all our problems, right? They're this big, rich corporation, so therefore they should solve all the problems of our community. I mean, there are people like that. And it's like, that's not their intention. They don't come to a community to be the problem solver. I mean, I think they are a participant in the community. I think they're a good corporate citizen. They do a lot of things, well outside of any of this stuff in terms of the fees they pay. But it's not their responsibility to solve all our problems. It's our responsibility. So in terms of the school and the infrastructure, that's our responsibility.
Yeah.
And we as a community need to figure that out and, put our pocketbooks out there and make this happen. It's not, Google will participate in that. Google, inherently will, but it's up to the community to do that. And when people look and say, well, because Google didn't do it for us, I'm not going to pay for it. Well, shame on us.
Not that. It's the lack of transparency. What you heard me say was that we didn't know how much Google was going to contribute to the school bond, right? And so that lack of transparency.
We did, really. I mean, all of that stuff is known, right? For the most part, it's a little bit tricky because
When you say contribute, are you talking about in tax revenue, or are you talking about in payments in lieu of taxes?
Bonds are really simple. It's the total value of the value of the county divided by the number of people paying it. So if the value of the county goes up, then the bond rate goes down. The bond rate would have been 30 cents lower had we just known that Google were going to pay their taxes, right? But because of that lack of transparency, because they were going to pay
wasn't a
them.
lack of transparency.
Well, we didn't know how much they were going to pay.
That doesn't mean we weren't transparent. If we didn't know the exact
what I'm saying
number.
is that little information for the community and the constituents would have changed that equation drastically. And the lack of transparency led us to a negative result, and that contributed to a negative result. It wasn't all of it by any means, right?
Robin, I went door to door.
I know.
Okay.
So did I.
As you know, I led the charge to try to get that bond passed. I talked to a lot of people. I've talked to literally hundreds of people since I've been mayor about the schools. And in my opinion, from talking to all these people and going door to door, Google hardly ever came up as a reason for people that were negative about the school bond. The first and overriding issue was trust. And the second was the one you just mentioned, too expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. So to say that, and I'm still not sure where you're coming from with this, but to say that somebody should have been more transparent and letting people know the contribution that Google would have made toward the tax rate on the bonds, I don't think was a major factor at all. I think it was, like I said, I think it was a matter of trust in the school board, which goes back decades, and the expense of the $140 million, what the effect would be on your tax bill. So that's my opinion. So.
And you're saying it would have gone down a little bit if we had known, and I think that's true.
10%, yeah, it would have gone down 10%.
Yeah, but it's like the thing is, it wasn't known because until the state does the assessment, So, but there was already a value on the property out there, so you could do some simple math and make some assumptions. And I think from the standpoint of the county, a lot of times people ask us like, well, what is this going to be and what is that going to be? And it's like, well, if we give you an answer, like a specific answer, and then, you're like, well, it wasn't exactly that. It's like, well, we don't control all those things. So sometimes it's a general thing, but as a general, like the bond committee could have looked at that and go, we know that this is going to come on the tax rolls. We see the value is this. It's going to be that. So we know that it's going to be a range from here and there.
Yeah, we actually
that was kind of a.
Yeah, we did do that. Yeah, and we sat with the city.
Okay.
We met with Klebs and Mayor Mays and a whole bunch of others, and they said that we couldn't use that information because it wasn't definite, and we were prevented from using that information.
Yeah,
and
that's always the challenge.
It still is indefinite.
But you can't.
It's indefinite.
I'm saying we know right now what the tax revenue is on that first facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is that tax revenue changes every single year. Right?
Yeah.
Depreciation, they're doing work, they're removing certain, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff happening. And, that's why, if you ask the county and you ask the assessor in particular, she's going to be real hesitant.
Yeah. We had
about
that
saying,
conversation
I'm
too.
sure she did.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been in meetings with her all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I know it's going to be at least this. So in my mind, but you can't guarantee it. But if you're doing a bond, that's the thing is if you're guaranteeing people in the community, like it will be X, you got to be a little conservative.
And we were fine being conservative.
Yeah.
We were fine with that, but it was not, we weren't able to do that. We were not given tools to do that, right? And that's it's a basic fundamental lack of transparency. When we've got 40%, so in the SIP for the next two, we've got 40% tax abatement and 50% tax abatement. Are we getting 50% of the tax value on the roll to offset bonds and value like that? Or are they just only paying 50%?
Yeah, so I mean, the mayor can answer that better, but the SIP is very prescriptive, right? So a certain amount goes on the tax roll, and I believe the first data center. So it depended on the value that the state determined, and if it was over $1 billion, then $100 million goes on the tax rolls, and I believe that was the case. So I think for that first one, $100 million immediately went on the tax rolls, just as pure property taxes. The other stuff is all fees. So like when the school district gets money, it's fee related. It's not tax related.
Yeah.
Anything that goes into that tax pot goes to the state and redistributed.
Yeah.
So
you use the word we weren't transparent. I think there's a difference between hiding information, which is not being transparent, which we did not do, and not being able to release information because
we don't know.
And the assessor doesn't know. I don't think that's a dishonest thing. I think maybe if it's not transparent, maybe that's not the right word to use. But we couldn't release that information because we're still unsure about the types of property tax revenue that some of these facilities are going to generate. And is that a lack of transparency or is that a lack of information? So I would submit it's a lack of information. And when you would say that it's not transparent, that almost makes it sound like we're hiding information. We've never hid any information.
It's really lack of certainty. That's a lot of times in the world of property taxes, it's a lack of certainty.
Especially
and so
with the
that when
data
you
centers.
ask the assessor, she's going to be very hesitant to give you certainty because there's a lot of stuff she won't know or any assessor wouldn't know.
Yeah, I mean, you just said you knew it, though, and you didn't say it, right? You just said that.
Well, but I would say I know it. Like, so when I think about that, I'm like, I know it's going to be at least this. That's me speaking, right? But the assessor's not going to do that because I'm not guaranteeing the public. But I know for me, when I vote on that thing, I know that there's going to be a decent amount of revenue coming.
Yeah, and I would have loved to hear you say that during the campaign. Like, that would have been
Nobody
great.
asked me.
It wouldn't, Robin. It wouldn't have mattered.
My responsibility to do that? Is that my responsibility?
Well, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I would submit it wouldn't have made any difference.
I submit it would.
I know you. Yeah, but I disagree with that because
it was such a close vote. And like the second issue being affordability, you're saying an epic and awesome fact on affordability wouldn't have made a difference.
So you're saying a difference of 30 cents per $1,000 of assessed value.
10% cheaper, and 10% off.
Would have made 375 people vote yes.
Yeah,
as opposed
by the
to no.
sounds of your follow-ups, it does sound like that. It sounds exactly like that.
We'll never know.
We won't. We won't know. We'll have to run another one
I know.
to find out, right?
CCC News offers ads for budgets of any size, ranging from mom and pops just starting out to a well-established business with decades of work in our area. Get in front of our 100,000 unique readers every month with your goods and service at just the time they are looking for your help. We can tailor your advertising to suit you and your budget to increase your business while not breaking the bank. Contact me, Tom Peterson, at tom@cccnews.com to see what works for you, or call me at 541-980-2756. Again, that's 541-980-2756. cccnews.com, working for you 24/7, all local, all the time in the Mid-Columbia.
Let's go to water. Can we talk about water?
Yes.
This is concerning for me. I mean, I just, like, when we're giving away when we created these tax
selling water.
abatements,
We're selling water
when we're
to
selling
people.
water, it's okay if,
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So The tax abatement has nothing to do with what
water.
you're talking about.
Water's different.
No, it absolutely is not. It's a utility that city runs. The city talks with their users of it. Google's obviously a huge user, but just so people are clear, the abatement had nothing to do. It doesn't give any incentives related to water. They don't get special deals or anything.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only, again, have one piece of data to go on. It came out during a court filing with the Oregonian, where we found out that Google's, number one, in a single year was using 236 million gallons of water in 2021, right? We know that.
I don't know that, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah, 236 million. Okay.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
I'll take your word
I
for
can
it.
quote that. Yeah, for sure.
If you ask me anything really technical, I don't know if I'll be able to answer it. But go ahead.
These numbers matter. They do. They really matter.
That's not technical. I think I can address some of your questions. If you get into cubic feet of water and the reservoir going up that's something.
We're going to stick to metric. We're going to say million gallons. Okay? We're going to stick to metric. Thank you. We're not going to old imperial English measurements. In 2021, you did a study, which was really good. The study is fantastic.
Who did the study?
City of the Dalles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You guys commissioned it from GSI Water Solutions.
Yeah, that's 2024.
No, this is 2021.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Dave Anderson oversaw it, the Public Works Director.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a little dated information because we have updated numbers in the Water Master Plan that was passed last year.
Oh, cool.
2024, but that's okay. That's okay.
So this picture paints an annual deficit of 439 million gallons of water. And this was before we knew that Google was using 239 million gallons. It shows that we're doing a really good job of using both the surface water as in the water treatment, in recycling that water into our system, as well as tapping the groundwater. And the Dog River Pipeline is clearly an awesome project. It's like really, really good. We love that. You know, obviously clean water is foundational. Humans are 70% water, right? So that's a really good project for sure. This picture, kind of the picture that was painted in 2021, and maybe I can pull up the 2024 numbers. It shows that the deficit of 439 million in the groundwater supply, right? Mm-hmm. And so then we got and so what we're looking at, and this is the new with the ASR storage, right? With the aquifer storage recharging project. And this is what it looks like new, but it doesn't include Google's usage of the groundwater, right? This thing. And so when we assume we do 239 times 3, right, we get 710, 720, right? Million gallons. That doesn't, we're not really accounting for this amount of water. And again, this lack of transparency in what the amount of water that Google is using is hindering our ability to really make a long-term assessment of the safety of the water in this region, which is an information that we all deserve, right? So how are we going to kind of get to a point where we can see what this picture looks like, and maintain that and make sure that Google isn't going to dry the groundwater like data centers have in other communities of America, right? We've seen these pictures of the data center and the water coming out brown, and we've seen this story play out. So I know that we have lots of rain. Obviously, climate change arrived this week, which was very helpful, but the ground that we're sitting on is only semi-permeable, right? It doesn't do a great job of soaking all of this water in when it arrives all at once. So tell me more about what I'm not seeing here and what's going on.
The only thing I can say is I just don't have enough information on my fingertips to be able to address the numbers. But there's no way that Dave Anderson and the powers to be at the city in 2021 would have approved any deal that would be perceived as leaving the rest of the city high and dry. That would not have happened. And I can also say that I'm glad you said the ASR is included in that. Are the groundwater, the water rights that we got from Google, that they got from the old aluminum plant, are they included in that? Because my understanding was that the water rights that we got from Google, which they got from the aluminum plant, alone are sufficient to address their water needs. Without the ASR and without the rest. The other thing is, by redundancy is where you tie in the port water system, which is Google, okay, with the rest of the city to the south. And by tying in these two together, we're able to provide redundancy where the south part of the city is helping the north side of the city and vice versa, which provides when there's an emergency or a major water break, is that we can tie in those together and provide that redundancy. So I think there was a lot of advantages to the deal we struck with the water system, and I'd have to check and see, make sure that those numbers, we would have never approved anything where we would perceive that we're leaving the rest of the city. We just wouldn't have done that, and so I'd have to check and make sure that that the numbers would include the water rights we got from the aluminum plant and were given to the city. And keep in mind that you're probably aware, I'm sure, that Google made about $28 million worth of improvements to the infrastructure in the port area to accommodate them, plus help the rest of the city through that redundancy. And they paid for that all themselves. The city didn't contribute any money for that. They're also paying the same water rates as everybody else, which is another thing you hear about how they're getting a sweetheart deal. They're actually paying the same water rates and the same electric rates that through the PUD that everybody else is paying too. So.
And I will speak with less authority than the mayor does, because we're not involved in the water system, but I've been around, a lot of the stuff. And I think you were at like the ground, were you at the ribbon cutting for stuff? So there's a lot of, I picked up information there, and I've talked to people related to Google that specifically work on water, because as you know, data centers have been criticized. They are a heavy water user. And so Google in particular, has people, that's all they do. And I think if I heard correctly, the Dalles is like the first site in their portfolio that they are basically net neutral, meaning that they use less water than they actually generated and actually helped the city develop. So the city is actually better off. If they weren't ever here, none of this stuff ever happened, the city would actually have less water available to the city than with Google here with the development of this increased infrastructure. So I think, I don't know if you could actually connect with them, but I think talking with Google's folks to really talk to them about, because as I hear it from them, water is critical for them, obviously, to operate, but also they want to be, they're very concerned about environmental issues, and people act like they don't even care, but I think they care a lot, and I think if you talk to them, you'd find out why.
Yeah, the last thing they would want is for them to leave the city, quote, high and dry, or without adequate water supply for the rest of the city. I mean, that's something they would never want for any community they're in, I would think. So
yeah, but I think it would be, I don't know if you have those contacts, but we could maybe get those contacts
That'd
for
be
you.
great. Yeah,
but I think it would be good to talk to them, because I think technically they could talk to it. And I think talking with Dave Anderson and also Dale McCabe, would be the right people to talk to about the details. But what I've heard consistently is they are working hard to try to make sure that the community has adequate water for them and also for the community.
That's really reassuring. Yeah. Thank you, both of you. Yeah, I wish that this information was, the water master plan being available is really great, but I really wish this information was available, right? Because we had to get this one number from a court filing, right, with the Oregonian, right? And that was how we got the one number, right? Yeah. So us saying, okay, we trust you, it's all great, when actually they took the newspaper to court over publishing the number, there's not, those two things don't quite align. I want them to, and I want to feel reassured by you. The numbers don't quite reassure me in the same way that what you say. Yeah. I also trust that if there was a big hole in the water system, then we would be addressing it. I also trust that. This paints the deficit in the water system. Water rights are different to actual SAW is what they call sustainable annual yield of a well, right? A water right is given, as a political and as a governmental piece. And when we're giving those in many years ago, it's hard to see how much water's in the ground. Technology has gone a long way since those water rights were actually created. So while the water rights are an important piece in this, it doesn't really speak to the SAW, right? Sustainable annual yield of the aquifer that we're sitting on. And that's really where my interest lies, is the aquifer and its condition, and how long it's going to last as somebody that's investing for the long term in the college, right?
Another person you could talk to is the water master too.
Great. Yeah, sure.
So I talk to the water
Get 'em
master
on.
a lot, you know, and I think that the aquifer that we're talking about down here has been in years past, like, I can't remember what the definition is, like a critical something. There was a definition of it. It was problematic. And I think, if I remember correctly, it has come out of that, and it's now much healthier in terms of the amount of water that's in that aquifer. And I don't remember which aquifer it is. Yeah. But the water master knows.
Yeah. Cool. Great. We have to pray. No, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just kidding. So thank you. This has been really helpful. What have we missed in this thing?
I think you should get a copy of that 2024 Water Master Plan.
Okay.
Because we just passed it last year.
Yeah.
And I know it's less than a year old, and that would have some updated. It really talks about the needs to expand our water system and replace the water plant that's 75 years old, the reservoir and the dam, and the water lines that connect those facilities with the rest of the city, 100 years old, 80 years old. So I'm glad you're a fan of the Dog River Pipeline. That has certainly helped. In my opinion, between the Dog River Pipeline and the improvements we're going to make, and what Google, the improvements they've made, which will help the rest of the city, I think we're going to be in great shape with water.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. You have a question?
Well, I was going to say, one other thing that you talked about was the power, and that's the other.
That too, yeah.
That was the other thing, that there's, like, people are highly critical of data centers because of that. So I did reach out to the PUD.
Oh yeah, they made Google pay for that whole situation. I love the PUD with that.
Yeah.
That's great.
But you mentioned the Power Act and this whole legislation's going through, and I'm not sure if you're aware of the details of that.
No, that's a state level argument. That's not a hyper local. But yeah, the Power Act doesn't actually legislate to the public utility district.
Right.
It's just profit making entities,
exactly,
like PGE and Pacific Power. And the PUD have done really, really good. And I love that we're charging the same. I couldn't find that information. Do you know where that reference information is in terms of where we know that Google are paying the same as the residential rate?
I don't know. So the statement I got from the PUD, and Roger would be more than happy to talk to you.
You know, Roger Klein.
Roger Klein.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Roger
So he said, just these were simple points. Everyone pays their own way. There's no subsidy. There's no cross-subsidization. And low rates and benefit of load increases can both be true. So we've seen the PUD grow immensely since the very beginning of Google. I mean, their organization, but it's also created immense benefits. And it's actually, there's kind of this assumption, and I think maybe some stuff is happening with the IOUs, but it's like, it's not happening here, and the PUD is not allowing it to happen. But we're actually there. It's kind of like the city and the water rates, and Rich can talk this about, but they've sold so much water to Google that they've been able to put off increases to the water rates for the citizens. So again, it's another benefit that the citizens have had.
In the past, yeah.
In the past, yes. I mean, but you can't do that forever.
Right.
And it's the same thing. But I think that in terms of electricity, you know, if whoever buys electricity, and the thing is, I remember at the very beginning, because I was there from day one, large load limits, there was a limit as to the amount of power you could buy from BPA. And Google had to stay below that, and it was a very interesting process to watch them, try to kind of work in that space, because they didn't want to go to market and get market rates, so they're only provided a certain amount of power. They couldn't just get unlimited power.
Hey, Josh, did you know that we are funded by our readers in large part?
I did know that, but please tell me more.
Yeah, it's our local readers here that make it possible for us to go out and gather news on local businesses and important issues in our community. And so we need people to support local news. Did you know you can make a difference in our community's economy and culture by supporting local journalism? I bet you did. But maybe you out there don't. And so you should visit our Support Us page at cccnews.com to subscribe to a monthly donation to keep news local and start making a difference in our community today. Again, that's cccnews.com.
And remember, CCC News is available for everyone and funded by readers.
Back to the school issue, right?
Yeah.
climate change has arrived in the gorge, right? We lost a roof last week, right? We got a 50-year
It's not
flood
all that's
level.
happened.
We're not all that's happened by any means, right?
No, I'm talking about, did you hear about the boulder that came down and almost,
I
Yeah,
did
I
hear
saw
about the
that.
boulders are coming down, right?
And the water plant.
The water plant, like we've had 50-year flood levels right here at this point. Which is aligned with climate change modeling, right? We're going to have bigger storms that deliver more precipitation in a short amount of times and things like that. Like we're seeing this happen. One of the things that this community needs is a community safe place, right? For this, we have the readiness center, but one of the things that the new school was going to provide was like a community situation for emergency preparedness type situation, right? But these factors of climate change are arriving. And how are we going to deal? Like, what is the plan to deal with this issue? I've got lots of reasons. It's 10 degrees on average warmer in June than it was before and it was 20 years ago. It's like warmer, it's wetter, it's colder. Like, what are we going to do about this issue?
as far as climate change goes, that's an area that is way beyond my pay grade. But I will say that if you look at that 2024 master plan, climate change is addressed in there and is taken into consideration when the consultants and Dave Anderson came up with the plan.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to it because it's just way beyond my area of expertise, but I know it is addressed in that 2024 water master plan.
Well, and I think part of the plan that's related to that is, and I was related, but, Congress just passed a bill to transfer 150 acres to the city from the Forest Service. And the reason for that is because they have been looking at a long time is raising the level of Crow Creek Dam. And part of the reason for that is because of, if there's less snow melt to melt it up higher, you need to capture more of this liquid precipitation when we have it. So,
Yeah.
the city is looking ahead, way ahead. I mean, the Crow Creek Dam, I think, project is something like maybe 30 years from now. But, I don't know. It's a long way. It's not going to happen next year. It's probably over a decade away. But they're looking ahead to try to figure out, to make sure that, and not just that, but the replacement of the water treatment plant, the replacement of the distribution lines from there down here. So there's lots of work to be done, and we're looking forward. I mean, the city is. We don't really deal with infrastructure issues. We deal with emergency management. So
Yeah.
we just recently completed a lot of emergency management planning all over the county, working with the cities. The city has a specific plan. Mosier, all the organized cities, most of them have. And climate resiliency is part of that. So,
Out of curiosity, where is the kind of safe zone in the Dalles if there was earthquake or something like that?
Rich and I both look at each other.
Well,
I think the Readiness Center is certainly one of them. I mean, that's the reason. That's a lot of reason. The youth, I'm trying to think of what it's called. We got money from the feds to fund that project, and then they took it back. It was the old
Resolution Center?
not the Resolution Center, but the child care center that was going to be
The old middle school.
Yeah.
the old middle school. And that part of that project was all about resiliency, that it was going to be a place that, whether it be smoke or climate or heat or whatever it was
Yeah.
going to be. So,
Yeah.
and I think if you look at that plan, and Sheridan McClellan, who's our emergency management person, if you look at that plan, it's definitely addressed in there. All of those things are
Yeah.
to try to,
Yeah.
figure out if this happens, what do we do? If that happens, what? Yeah.
So it sounds like we do need a new school to meet our emergency response plan, don't we?
Well, I don't think
But it sounds like what you just said.
between Rich and I don't think either one of us would say no to that. I mean, I
No.
think there's definitely a need for school facilities, and he's been working really hard. I was really hopeful that it was going to happen, and quite honestly, I hope that they move forward again with a plan. I think they got to look at all of the issues that came up during that and at least respond. I mean, the one thing that I, heard consistently, and it was actually at a meeting that I was at with you, and somebody asked the question, but it's like they decided not to show anybody what it would look like. And their consultant, I think, was telling them, don't do that because you get into trouble. If you show them what it looks like, they're going to want that exactly. And when it doesn't have exactly that, but it's like people don't buy stuff if they can't see it. So you gotta, somehow put disclaimers on there and say, this is what we're looking at. This is the kind of building it's going to be.
Yeah,
I think
we
that-
agree on that point.
Yeah,
and disagree with
I
the
do think
consultants.
there's a will in this community to do that. I think it's going to be difficult, but I hope the school district and the community finds a way to do something for us, because it's for us, it's for the community, it's for the kids, it's for the future, and I think it is an investment that has to be made, and I think we have the resources to do it if we all kind of step forward and agree to help out for a while.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, going back to my previous argument, I hope that we can get a really good picture of what our tax base really looks like when we do this, right? Like it doesn't feel like too much to ask to just know what it is, what it will be, if even at a very based estimate, right? It doesn't have to be the top. It does have to be somewhere close to the bottom, because inflation is almost guaranteed to only go one direction, especially in this economy, right? And so I think like a really good view of what's there is needed. Like, so when smart people look, like myself and you guys and everyone and people in the Dalles look at this, they go, oh, we're missing like our entire industrial zone, and like that's not something we can vote for, because it's
When you said, I think I quoted you, that you said what it is and what it will be. What it is shouldn't be a problem. We should be able to nail that. Here's exactly the type of, but what it will be in the future, and Scott addresses.
That's different.
That's a different deal.
Yeah, of course.
And that's something our county assessor, I think, would be very nervous about releasing.
Sure, they don't sell county assessor crystal balls, unfortunately. As soon as they do, I'll buy one for you guys.
The other thing too, because there's the tax base, right? Because that's what general obligation bonds are based on.
Right, yeah.
But the thing that we've had quite a few discussions about, and some discussions with the school district, because they're also getting a lot of fees, but we're all getting fees that are not taxes, and how we utilize those fees is for us to decide, right? And we've had many conversations with the city. The city has a lot of infrastructure issues that they are anticipating they're going to need those fees for. But we did have a discussion at one point. I think we asked the school district, hey, if you guys, think you need some of these fees, it wasn't my idea, but somebody had made an idea that we would pledge some of these fees that the city and the county would get to the school district if they ran a bond, and they could use that as part of the funding. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It didn't happen. But there still is that potential opportunity. But it gets pretty tricky when you talk about the tax base, because the tax base is the tax base. Now, $100 million went onto the tax base this year with this first data center. Based on that, I would expect that another $100 million would go onto the tax base. So you can do the math on that, and $100 million is no chump change when it comes to it's increasing. I don't know what that would be. It's probably not 10%, but it's probably single digits.
So we knew in 2021 that $100 million was going to go onto the tax rolls, but the tax assessor doesn't know what's going to happen in the future, and we can't say it.
Right.
Those two things are simultaneous.
Which facility are you talking about?
Well, I'm
The first
saying that
one
the
or the
SIP
last
agreement
one?
says that you've got to present 100 million and say, well, at least it's at least 100 million. So put that there.
For the
right?
two of them, this was the problem. If it was less than $1 billion, it was 50 million, right?
Okay.
So it was a situation where if they had to know what the amount of the investment was for one data center, and I've been told that it was over $1 billion, which means that 100 million went on there. So I'm assuming that the next one comes up, it would be another 100 million. So
Not the most recent.
the most recent one,
right,
yeah.
right.
It's actually gone on the tax roll, and they're still building, obviously, the
So
second
we
one.
knew 50 million was
We
going to
knew
go.
50 million at
was
the
going to go
least,
on the
at the
tax.
least,
But yeah, but it takes like some serious deep dive to get there, right? Like I wish this information was available to the
I'm
community.
assuming when you were doing your presentations, you were talking about that, because the SIP is prescriptive. It says that it has to be a certain amount of investment, and when it is 50 million, or actually it could be less than
we
that.
didn't get any of this. So like this is such foundational, important information that the community needs to make these decisions, and this is what I'm fighting for. And I'm so glad you came so we can talk about this. I'm sorry that the Good Jobs First is a political organization that got us
My
here. I
opinion.
apologize, and I'm sorry it's hard to hear this criticism, because I know you guys have worked so hard on this for so long. And likewise, you've seen the exasperation in me of working on the school district and the school bond for so long, right? We share this, right? This is something that we share. And so again, I'm like, as we move forwards, I really hope we can commit to continuing to being really apparent with this information and really transparent. I mean, there's a transparency and transparent, obviously, right? But with the stuff that we know, even if it's a base minimum, we can label it as base minimum. And like things like that, like I really hope we can do that. I really hope we can publicize the fact that Google are paying the same as everybody else. I really hope we can do that. And I'm gonna be part of that, sure, because I'm the press here in this instance, right? And so I'm dedicated. I will say those. I will write those stories too. That's totally fine for sure. But I think. I just have to thank you guys for coming on, and thank you for being part of this discussion. Appreciate it. I hope we can follow up with this and in some time when some things have changed and we can work through those. And thanks for all you do for the communities that you serve.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Great.